As time goes by, we wonder if this city and the state should get Major League Hockey again. I know they not had that big a market for hockey, but for me, when this squad was in the WHA, they literally stirred the pot because of the type of players that they signed, the amount of egotism it took for its fans to say we can win and motivated the team to do well. And I really think there should be a 30 for 30 documentary on this team because they meant a lot to a lot of people. So today we're going to be talking about the relatively short history, but the major impact of the Indianapolis Racers. Now, the Indianapolis Racers were a part of the WHA from 1974 to the 1978-79 season. We'll get to that in a second. They competed in all 4 full seasons before folding 25 games into the 79 campaign. They played at the venerable Market Square Arena and are often best known for being the first professional team to secure the services of Wayne Gretzky and his soulmate, Mark Messier. Now, the Racers were known to WHA for their sometimes fanatical and dedicated fans. They led the WHA in attendance for the 77 season and eventually won the 1976 WHA Eastern Division title and swept the rival Cincinnati Stingers in the 77 WHA playoffs. Notable players for the Rangers included future Hall of Famers Gretzky and Messier, as well as the great Pat Stapleton, Davy Keon, Michel Dion, and Kim Claxton. Now, the Racers' best-known coach was Jacques Demers, who later went on to lead the Habs to the Stanley Cup in '93 and became a Canadian senator. Not an Ottawa senator, of course. Now, the Racers' demise came under the stewardship of Nelson Scalabania, a flamboyant Canadian real estate businessman. Scalabania, who regularly flipped real estate property and sport franchises for a profit, was repeatedly accused of mismanaging the promised indie hockey market and applying to move the franchise to Canada, where it presumably have a much better chance of being included in the eventual merger the WHA was negotiating with the NHL. Having taken a firm position that no surviving Canadian WHA teams would be excluded from a merger, and knowing that the NHL was only willing to ever consider taking a smaller number of WHA teams, the WHA was not willing to risk upsetting delicate merger negotiations and rebuffed all proposals to add more teams in Canada. So what Scalabania wanted to do was move the team to Canada before the merger, and the NHL would basically not deny them entry because they said we're going to take only the Canadian teams, plus the Whalers. Anyway, now, unable to move his team, Scalabania looked elsewhere to gain leverage in the ongoing merger discussions. He turned to underage players, as the NHL had stringent rules regarding the age of players that could sign, while the WHA regularly signed underage players. His best-known signing was that of Gretzky, at the time was 17, who signed a personal services contract worth between $1.125 and $1.7 million over 4 to 7 years. At the time, one of the largest contracts ever offered a hockey player. The move did not improve the team's desperate financial situation. In just 8 games in the 79 campaign, he liquidated his greatest assets to his old friend and former and future business partner, the controversial Peter Pocklington, owner of the Oilers. Pocklington purchased Gretzky and 2 other indie players, goalie Eddie Mio and forward Peter Driscoll, paying a reported $700,000 for the contracts of the 3 players, although the announced price was $850,000. The Racers folded 17 games later on December 16th, 78, and Major League Hockey has not returned to Indianapolis. Now, they did have the Greensboro Generals as a farm team, but obviously no expansion was given. Now, the other 6 WHA teams finished the season, and before the Winnipeg Jets won the 79 AFCO World Cup, the league accepted the terms of a merger with the NHL, whereby Edmonton, Winnipeg, Quebec, and New England would enter the NHL as expansion teams for 79-80, and the WHA itself would cease operations. Cincinnati and Birmingham, the other surviving WHA teams, were paid off to disband. Now, Messi also began his career with the Racers in the 79 season, playing 5 games but failing to register a point before finishing his 5-game tryout contract. He was picked up later by Cincinnati for the remainder of the season before being selected by the Oilers in the 79 NHL entry draft, as he was still draft eligible. He retired in 2005 as the last active player to have skated the WHA and also the last active player to have played for the Racers. Scalabrini himself would ultimately become an NHL owner a year after the merger, when he fronted a Calgary-based ownership group that purchased the Atlanta Flames and moved them north, where they became the Calgary Flames. But no confusion with the WHE team, the Calgary Cowboys, even though the color scheme is very similar. Now, opening campaign for Birmingham at 1857-3 did not qualify to playoffs. 1976, they were first in the Eastern Division, lost in the quarterfinals. 77 were third in the Eastern Division, won the quarterfinals against the Stingers, but lost to the semis and eventual champs, the Nordiques. 78 did not qualify for the playoffs and folded on December 15, 1978, in the midst of the 78-79 season. Overall record, 118, 202, 24, with, get this, ladies and gentlemen, 5,000 minutes of penalties. So you weren't scared to take a few players. Now, on Wikipedia, they have a list of Indianapolis Racers players, a very motley crew, some really good players like Brian Campbell, Claxon, Dion, Peter Driscoll, very Bob Fitchner, very underrated player. Bill Goldsworthy also played. Wayne Gretzky, Nick Haberuk, we did a podcast on him lately. Paul Hoganson, of course. Dave Inkamp, Gary Ennis, very talented goalie. Davy Keon, Claude LaRose, of course. Rich Leduc, René Leclerc. Blair McDonald, Gary McGregor as well. Darren Maggs, the great Joe Marat. Peter McDuffie as well. Mark Messier. Eddie Mio, Kevin Morrison, of course. Rosaire Perma, great player. Rusty Pantaneau, Bill Prentice. So you see a lot of former NHL players. Larry Sakharuk, very underrated. Again, Gary Smith, Claude Saint-Sever, and Mike Zook, of course, later on to play with St. Louis. So the Racers, I miss them a lot because I love their logo. I love their way of playing. But Indianapolis, you know, a lot of controversy with Indy over the years because the Baltimore shift to Indianapolis, it just seemed the city not say as part of controversy through the years. I think the Racers could have did well in the NHL. That's my personal opinion, because you know they had a great market, and the fans, my God, the fans, they love the Racers. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're doing, give us a comment, like, or subscribe. Requests are always encouraged, and if you're a Racers fan, please comment on your favorite memory as an Indy Racers fan. I'd like to hear what you think, because you know you were important to us in Canada, because the Racers games against the future NHL franchises, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and even against the Cowboys, they were quite interesting. So anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.